Hello, everyone. How's it going in chat? It seems like Chud is not there yet. Gonna try and call him again. Yeah, he's just stretching his legs. Okay, he'll be back. Hey, what's up, Otter? How's the audio? Can anyone tell me? Invite Infrared for the next talk. I would love to. I would love to see what's poking in that head of his. Great. So hello everyone. It's gonna take maybe a few minutes until ChudLogic comes into the stream. So in the meantime, I will be your entertainer. Hello, my name is Jer. I am one of the producers on the Nordic model. You might recognize me from one of our videos. So today we're going to be talking some echo. All right. Let me see here.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing good. Sorry. There just seems to be a bit of an echo on my part, apparently.
No worries.
Let me see what I can do about that.
No problemo. This is the first
All
live
right.
stream, right?
Yeah, this is our first official live stream on the Nordic model. I've only ever streamed on my personal channel so far. How's the audio now, gang? Fixed. Yes, there was actually two freaking audio sources.
Oh yeah, it's all good. Listen, it's all good fun. The old streaming game.
Yes, of course. I can't wait to get into the whole debate debacles, but not on
Yes.
here. Never, not on here. Never on here.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No, this
Yeah.
is this is not on brand for the Nordic model, but it is very on brand for myself.
Okay. Well, I'm actually quite interested because I've seen the Nordic model about. I've seen you've talked to some like of the socks from Twitter and the roses from Twitter and stuff like that. Is that right?
Yes, we're very big in the socks and roses circles.
Yeah. Of course.
Many of them like us. Many of them dislike us. I don't know.
Okay.
Honestly, I don't really manage the Twitter of the channel much.
Okay.
I've been a bit of a on a Twitter brick recently, so.
Well, I defy all emoji-based political labeling, and I stand alone with my own emote or emoji, which is a swastika. No, I'm just kidding. That's a meme. Okay. I did say I was going to come on and represent.
First stream spicy.
I did say I was going to come on and represent the hardline individual responsibility memes. So yeah,
I'm
not sure how you feel about that.
Specific side. Okay. This is
no, not at all. No, I'm just memeing. I mean, it's actually. Well, I'm sure we'll get into it, but I think that for me, because obviously this is relevant to the recent kind of discourse about food stamps and whatnot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's quite an interesting disconnect that happens where we have this meme of individual responsibility, and people don't seem to make the connection of how difficult it is to apply that on like a broad, like systemic level, right?
Yes.
And I think that's kind of a big problem that people come into. And it's kind of my criticism of some of Doomer Media's positions. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Doomer Media was just like, it kind of went on a really weird tangent during that discourse, but that's like, I don't want to talk about like really any of the drama or the debates that have been going on about it. I really just wanted to have kind of an informational discussion on the subject.
Yeah, sure.
So I've been doing like quite a bit of research. A lot of people like Chad Not Chud and Sid and Cartesian Otter in chat. I've also been helping on that front, providing with sources. Otter is actually like a great friend of the show. He's been very helpful with the Discord and everything. So shout out to him. And so I wanted to actually kind of dispel some misconceptions at first. So according to some of the research that I've done, and this is, I've got, sources here from Alinea Nutrition, which is a kind of a think tank about nutrition generally, centered around North America. So there's one article here that kind of breaks down the realities of poverty and obesity, Ayn Rand versus nutrition science. So, big personal responsibilities versus what the science and data says on the subject.
Okay.
So there's like one of the first kind of misconceptions that we have is, like we can't trust the poor with the money because they'll spend it all on junk food. Right?
Yeah, that was, without going into the drama, that was what it was based on, is this idea that, if we give poor people cash instead of some sort of restricted, means-tested benefit, they'll just go and waste it all on hamburgers, booze, and cigarettes, I should say, on this stream. But yeah, that's, what they think they do with it. It's kind of like, it's almost an equivalent to if I give £5, $5 to a homeless person, they'll just go and spend it on drugs. It's that kind of level, I think.
Yeah, that's really like the strange thing about it. But essentially, like from what I'm seeing here, it's that poor people spend less time eating out than any other socioeconomic group. So the conception that if we just give them money, they'll go and spend it on like McDonald's is like just factually wrong. Because being poor, you try and get as much like food for the penny as possible all the time, and that means that poor people will go out, but they'll do it a lot less because they're penny pinching a lot more, and so they're trying to get as much of the food that they can for as little money as they can. And this is where a lot of essentially the price to purchasing power ratio for grocery and store goods are really important, because if they eat out a lot less, that means that they'll get most of their food from grocery stores and from different stores. And what we've seen here is that actually, if we observed from if we observed data from 1985 to 2000, there's been a big shift in the proportion of food budgets. And so what we've seen is that fresh food and vegetables have gotten roughly about 40% more expensive relative to purchasing power.
Wow.
Total fruits and vegetables have gotten roughly 20% more expensive relative to purchasing power. Cereal and bakery goods have gotten roughly a bit more than 10% more expensive relative to purchasing power. Now, there's other food industries that are heavily subsidized where they've become less expensive relative to purchasing powers. Some are healthy, some are less. A lot of them have like healthy goods within them and unhealthy goods within them. So now we're talking about like dairy that's gotten roughly 2% less expensive relative to purchasing power. You've got red meats that have gotten roughly 5% less expensive. Poultry, a bit more than 5%. But then you've got sugars and sweets. They've become roughly like 7% also less expensive relative to purchasing power. You've got fats and oils that have gotten almost 15% less expensive relative to purchasing power. And you have soft drinks that have gotten roughly 25% less expensive relative to purchasing power. So then you can see that there's kind of this price incentive to buy unhealthy foods if what you're trying to do is get as much food possible per dollar, where you'll be pushed towards some of the unhealthy foods that have become like less expensive per purchasing power. And that's the real
Well,
ratio that you gotta
yeah.
look at.
Well, there's another angle to this as well, and I don't know if this is something that's been looked at or whatnot, but it's like if you're poor, does like you know the density of the food or the calories play into it? Because obviously you could spend X amount on lettuce, which is healthy but very light in calories, versus a more dense food, which could have like a more detrimental impact on your health, say.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, this is something else
I'm
that we can see where a lot of people will end up buying starch-rich foods, like
yeah,
big in carbs. And carbs, they'll give you a lot, like they give you a lot of energy. They'll make you feel full in the moment. But the problem is they won't make you feel full over a long period. What you need to feel
yeah,
full over a longer period is food that is rich in protein. So, like a lot of people will be underserved in terms of proteins, and that will make it so that they'll feel hungry faster. So you'll feel full in the moment because you got a carb load, and then you'll feel hungry a lot faster than if you had a reduced carb load, but with a healthier amount of protein. And the big problem also
yeah,
is the problem with saturated fats that tend to make you feel very heavy, and also that can cause a lot of problems with cholesterol. Those are fats that are very rich in the American diet. You can find them in a lot of red meat, pork, beef, even poultry meats, especially if it's cooked with the skin. You're gonna find a lot of saturated fats there, and those tend to be the main protein sources for the average American. And when you see how rich in saturated fat the American diet is, it's no wonder that the obesity rate is so much higher than other countries. When you also take into account that sugar-rich goods are also a lot less regulated than in other nations.
yeah. I know that off the top of my head, I don't know exactly what the exact word of the law is, but I know that there's a lot more. Like for example, we don't have high fructose corn syrup. I'm told that apparently is quite a negative, detrimental impact on the American diet, but I don't know how true that is.
Yeah, it does tend to be really bad for you, like in general. Because it's again, it's based on corn, and so it's gonna be like you're essentially like taking a starch and you're trying to take the syrup out of it. Whereas if you're to essentially like get to use it as a sweetener, whereas there are a lot much healthier sweeteners that you can use. Yeah, corn syrup is like literally in all of American foods, and if you're like, let's say you're trying to eat healthy, and you're also trying to eat cheap. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna look for like chicken breast, which tends to be on the healthier side of foods. You also want something that you can easily preserve. So you're gonna find frozen chicken breast strips that are pre-cooked, so they're like they're easy to conserve. They're easy to prepare so that you can mix it in almost anything. What you can see in the ingredients is that actually there's like 20% actual chicken protein. Most of the protein is going to come from a soy base, and it's going to all be held together with a corn starch.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Frankenfood, I think we call that over here.
Well, the funny thing is also is like if you look at the nutritional value, it's not bad.
Yeah.
Like, but there's this kind of like the fact that that there's a starch base is going to make it a bit more like carb rich, but it's not gonna like reduce the protein either. And so it's gonna make the chicken strips much cheaper in comparison to just full on chicken, obviously, but it's also not gonna be that bad for you. The main problem with those goods is that, like a lot of frozen goods, they are very sodium rich, and having a
Right.
sodium heavy diet tends to cause some issues in terms of weight, like water retention. It can also ends up causing, a lot of kidney stones and some cardiovascular issues over a long period of time. So
Damn.
that's like, so when like a lot of Americans, a lot of people in general buy frozen goods, if you do that, there's going to be a lot of frozen goods that tend to be on the savory side, not on the sweet side, that will be loaded with sodium. And that, like a lot of high, like sodium is just one of the most widely used preservative. And so when you have a high sodium high level of sodium consumption, you're going to end up with a lot more kidney stones. You're going to end up with a lot more cardiovascular issues, just in general.
So, like, one thing I guess I don't understand then, because obviously we're quite fortunate. I mean, living in the UK even. I don't know exactly what governs it now because obviously we've left the EU, but I know that there are quite reasonable regulations on like certain foodstuffs. Like, does that not exist in America, or like, how does it work in America? Do you know?
Well, I'm Canadian, so mainly what we've seen, like, what can you reformulate your question real quick?
Yeah, sure. So,
Just to
like,
make sure that I
I
understand
don't.
it.
So, yeah, sure. So, I mean, I'd imagine in Canada it's similar, where you've got pretty stringent regulation on food. That means that some of these issues aren't present, right? So, like,
Yeah,
why is it
I
in
think that the
America it's a
regulation in
particularly
terms
big
of
issue?
food, yeah, I think the regulations in terms of food manufacturing in Canada tends to like take more steps towards like the European Union and the UK, which kind of helps explain why our obesity rate is relatively like pretty much the same as the UK. And the UK is not really like the best example to follow because it's the worst example in like in all of Europe. But it's still like 28% in comparison to the America's like a lot of the sources that I found were dating back to 2008, and they were showing rates of like 42%. Now I believe that it's been reduced to like 36.
Damn,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I know.
They make them big in America, don't they?
They do, and a lot of that has also to do with like portion distributions, and those are things that you can't really control as a consumer unless you're like buying in vrac. Like buying like just from vrac stores where you just choose your portion yourself and you buy by weight. Those are not really things that you can control. If you go to a restaurant, you can't control your portion really all that well. You're gonna have like maybe 3 settings, right? Small, medium, large, and that those portions need to be regulated and need to kind of be reduced so as to encourage people to not overeat. If you just, there's a lot of I don't know if you've ever watched those videos of people from different countries like comparing fast food portions of like or fast food meals, and like it's always American versus UK or America versus Canada or even America versus France, and every time you're just gonna notice like the American portion is gonna be twice as much. Yeah, every damn time, and it's no wonder that obesity is such a problem when you on the distribution end, like restaurants are just hyper loading their meals.
Yeah, it's like you look at like a drink over here, you get like a sort of large drink, and it's like it's a big drink, but it's not completely absurd. They've got like these big gulps in America, and obviously they're filled with sugar, and
Oh,
they're
we have
massive.
we have those here too. I'm not gonna lie. We have
Oh,
those
okay, you
here
got
in
those as
Canada.
well.
Yeah, yeah. We don't have like big gulps. We have polar pops.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
damn.
those are distributed by Special K. I believe they're in America too now. I saw like Bastia even post a picture of some on his desk. The proud American just consuming Canadian goods. Poor him.
The thing is like I feel like the problem is like there's an old saying of like everything in moderation, right? Which I think is quite a legitimate concept, but I feel like is it like the regulations that go against that then? Like is it like basically I don't know, what is the reason that we have all these problems and we got these, you know, enormous drinks and stuff and seemingly very little regulation on their sale and whatnot?
Right. Well, in America, it's mainly because of like a lot of conservative policies is just like just trying to deregulate the private sector as much as possible to essentially like let corporations provide what the people want, even though like the people are being advertised to want a specific something. There's a big like manufacturer like consent aspect to it, where when you're told to want something day in and day out, you're a lot more likely to develop a genuine want for it. So this is another
Yeah.
aspect where like there needs to be portion regulations on the distribution end. There needs to be like quality assurance on the manufacturing end, so as to make sure that the food supply in general is healthier. There needs to be also regulations on the advertising end, and this is something that America has very little of. They used to have things like that banned advertising to children directly, And in the 80s, I believe that was stripped away, which is why we ended up with like so many Saturday morning cartoons that were essentially just toy advertisements. And
Well,
so like
yeah.
people are being
This is what I
advertised
find.
like a bunch of different things that really shouldn't be like that widely advertised. Like in America, it's baffling to see that many just advertisements for pharmaceuticals. Like that's not something that we have at all here.
What I find, like, this is what I find frustrating when I speak to some of the libs. You know, is they act like, and this is more about the consumption memes, but they kind of act like consumption is like a rational behavior that people just engage in. Like they wake up one day and want to consume a bunch of shit, and it's like they sometimes fail to kind of recognize or register like the massive role advertising plays in people's decision making. And yeah, if you've constantly got messaging telling you to go and buy a shitload of food, and it's all tweaked to your psychology, and yeah, you're going to go and buy a shitload of food. So what do we do about that, right? You've got to have some control over it, surely.
Yeah, there needs to be some regulation in terms of advertising. So right now, like already we've been hitting on like 3 different policies, which is regulating manufacturing so as to assure better food quality in general, regulating food portion on the distribution end so as to make sure that people are not being kind of pressured into overeating by restaurants and by food distributors, and also advertising regulation so as to make sure that people don't have predatory messaging pushing them towards unhealthy consumption. Those are like 3 key policies that European nations tend to have that America doesn't. I don't know if you've heard, even recently, Kellogg's just like a bunch of like Kellogg's cereals were like taken off the shelves by the Mexican government because the Mexican government just went no more cartoon mascots on the boxes of goods being advertised to children. So like,
well, yeah,
and I actually think that's a really good policy. Like I think like the big bright colors, the like cartoon mascots, those are all things that like sales representatives and advertising executives, they know that those things attract children. They know that those things are designed to attract children. And the whole point is to get a kid to like to just like whine to their parents again and again and again until the parent gives in and buys the cereal that's actually bad for them. And there's also a lot of misleading advertisement in terms of cereals specifically that is just completely inaccurate. Kellogg's has been sued so many times over having just misleading advertisement where they sell their products as like a healthy option, and then you look at the nutritional value and it's like 25 grams of added sugar per portion.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree. And there's this other thing they do as well where this is quite common for like a lot of like especially fast food restaurants, but they'll like, rather, obviously they don't want to admit that their food is like bad and whatever, so they do this thing where they do an advertising campaign and it's like, you know, healthy living, or they sponsor the Olympics, or they'd say like, make sure you're enjoying this as part of a balanced lifestyle and stuff like that, you know. And they're acting like, oh, actually it's the fact that you're not exercising enough, fatty. You know, they leave out the fact that their food is full of absolute bullshit that just makes people unhealthy, you know. And
yeah, that's the whole point of like, okay, go to McDonald's and just buy a salad instead of a burger. Then you look at the nutritional value of the salad and you can see that the salad is also loaded with fat because the dressing is just trying to kill you essentially.
No, absolutely.
It's
frustrating,
really horrible. Yeah. It's like really horrible that people are being misled into all of those things, into like purchasing those things that they are being told are healthy for them, and by far they're healthier than like buying a Big Mac, but they're still not healthy. It's like there was the big Beyond Meat craze among like all of the fast food chains, you know, like McDonald's did it, Burger King did it, McDonald's did it. I think even like KFC did it. And that's like completely like, and people are being told like, oh yeah, those are healthy options. Look at the nutritional value of a Beyond Meat burger that you can buy at a grocery store. It's not healthy for you. It's not healthy at all. And It's also, just like all of the other frozen goods, just completely loaded with sodium. It's just as likely
Yeah.
of causing you cardiovascular like issues as any other sodium soda good.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree that there's often things that are presented, and it because there is this focus on public health and there is this focus on eating better and stuff like that that people have sort of picked up on over the past however many years. Companies play on that, and it's almost like they feel if it's a little bit healthier, they can present it as the healthier option, right? But often it turns out not to be.
Yeah, I mean, when the bar is so low, it's really easy to jump right over it. But there's also like the aspect of cost, where obviously most people are trying to get as much food for as little money as possible, and this essentially leads people to like buy in bulk and consume in bulk. But mainly, that's something that we can exploit to redirect people's purchasing patterns. And this is where sin taxes come in. I don't know if you've like heard of sin taxes in general. I know that like in the UK you have like a sugar tax, don't you?
Yeah, that's is it a Pagovian tax? Is that the right word for it?
Yeah, I believe so. I'm not.
That's the nerd word.
I don't use. I don't use the nerd words. Okay.
Okay, that's fair enough. I was just checking if I was being clever or not. But yeah, I think that I think that yeah, I'm familiar with this, and this is something that I think like libs like to propose this. I think that's quite a common thing for libs to talk about. Is
libs, socks, roses, just syntaxes just tend to work. Honestly,
yeah.
The whole point is, the whole point is that you implement a syntax on things that you don't want people to consume, so as to discourage the consumption of that thing. Like, for example, a carbon tax. That's an example of it, or even a tobacco tax, an alcohol tax, just in general, and a sugar tax also. So what you do is you tax those goods, and so as to discourage their consumption. And that does end up actually affecting consumer behavior. Mexico, when it implemented a sin tax on, let's say, sugary carbonated drinks, just saw I believe it was a 10% reduction in consumption over the first year, and then another 15 over the second year. So that's overall like a 25% reduction in consumption of a good that you didn't want people to do. That's just effective in terms of like trying to affect people's behavioral patterns. And what you can then do is you can use the revenue of those taxes to subsidize healthier goods on the consumer end. And so that ends up like not only just discouraging people from buying unhealthy food, it's also encouraging people from buying the healthy one. And it's not targeting just the poor, it's affecting everyone. It's directing, it's like helping to rearrange the consumer behaviors of the entire population, which is really important if you want to have a large effect on such a societal issue that is obesity, right? Because you can't just create a whole like societal wide change in obesity rates by just targeting one subset of the population, or
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I kind of the idea of it is good, right? And I think the idea that you're incentivizing healthy products whilst disincentivizing unhealthy products is got some concept behind it. I guess like there's a couple of things that I notice about it though. And obviously this isn't the fucking number shit. This is my, gut trust anecdotal takes. But like for example, I know that with the sugar tax in the UK, for example, that has an impact on the price of Coca-Cola, which obviously contains sugar. But the Coke Zero product, or the one without sugar, obviously isn't affected by that. So you have it in some cases where like a 0-calorie soda is presented as a lower cost, and I just wonder, like, is it actually making people make better lifestyle choices, or is it meaning that companies are finding a way to still sell the product in a way where they're not getting hit by this tax and there's still a attractive price? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like, that makes sense. But like the thing is, like the sugar-free actual products are like demonstrably healthier, so they still end up making a healthier choice.
Yeah, sure. I guess like I suppose the real deal would be to get them all drinking water, but that's probably a bit of an excessive idea, maybe.
I mean, hey, if only water was actually free. That would be great. Yeah.
True. Yeah, that's true. I guess. Yeah.
You know,
And
like
water
imagine having
quality in Europe's pretty
advertisement
good.
telling people to just, hey, drink tap water. It's
Well,
free.
actually,
Just drink it.
I tell you what, this is actually an interesting angle to go on with this, right? Because I think that one thing I kind of note with it too is like we use the power of marketing to often like elicit ends, right? To basically make it so we spend more money on companies' products, right? Like what I don't know what this is like in America, but I think there needs to be more investment in like healthy eating campaigns and stuff like that. I think that could be a good way of bridging the gap between people maybe not knowing what best to do with the money they've got, or like their best healthy options, and getting the information to them. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there
Anything on that?
definitely needs to be some financing towards like advertisement campaign telling people like, hey, instead of buying soda, just drink water out of the tap and filter it, you know, and those kinds of things, or even telling like advertising like people what kind like, hey, instead of buying like sugary things, just eat a fruit. Just like go apple picking and eat those apples, or something like that. And it's like there needs to be some financing towards it, but there also needs to be political will, and that is really hard to do in America when there's so many different lobbying groups that will see their market share threatened by such advertisements, and they will try and block the distribution of any such advertising. So there's
Yeah, I mean,
definitely like some there's definitely a lot of obstacles, but essentially like you need to essentially find people who will turn down those lobbying groups and keep on putting the pressure to have those advertisements made and build up the political capital to get that thing going. And it's really hard to do in America. It's probably gonna take a lot of freaking pressure, a lot of freaking work, but it needs to get done.
yeah, 'cause it sounds kind of ridiculous to maybe some American people, but I don't know what the nature of it is. But in the UK, like we often have these kind of public health awareness campaigns from like the NHS and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And it's yeah, it's kind of like normal. Like you see it and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that seems good. And there's like resources and stuff like that. Like, are there resources in America for people for this sort of thing? I don't really know, but
In
it
America,
would seem to.
I don't believe there are any. I don't think that like there's a big federal push for it. I don't also believe that there's a big like statewide push for it. Maybe like a few select states. But yeah, that's not also something that we see much in Canada. I believe like we don't have like much advertising in terms of like, hey, do some healthy eating. It's more just kind of left to the side, and we still end up with relatively like notably better obesity rates than America, which is surprising considering like our proximity to them and how much cultural influence they have over us due to that proximity. But also we have a lot more regulation on the manufacturing and distribution and portion ends, and I think that's what ends up having the biggest effect. So
Yeah, and I guess the question is, I don't know if that's relevant to maybe because UK is pretty chubby, but like what is it? Is it just regulation you think in like European countries that makes a difference then?
yeah, I mean a lot of like those regulations just are effective. If we look at, let's say, six different policies that have been seen as really effective, it's the syntax, warning labels on foods. So like when something has been like when something is considered unhealthy by, let's say, this, I suppose in the US it would be the CDC. In Here in Canada it would be Health Canada. For you, I suppose it would be probably the NHS. Like if some good is considered to be unhealthy, you stick a label on it saying, hey, this is bad for you, consume at your own risk. And then also restrictions on advertising, restrictions on the sale of unhealthy foods. So then again, like regulating portion prices and making sure that like maybe people can't necessarily buy them in bulk. You have to buy them in individualized packets so that you're less likely to buy a lot of them, and that way that will end up reducing your consumption because you have less of them on hand. Also, just information campaigns have been shown to be pretty useful. So those are also things that we should have, like we've been discussing. And finally, the subsidization of healthy foods. So then you can have the tax there to help change people's behavioral patterns. And then whatever revenue is brought upon by the tax, you can then use to subsidize on the consumer end the healthy foods.
Yeah, well, this is an interesting thing. Like in the UK, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but in the UK, about 5 or 10 years ago, I can't remember, but they basically introduced new legislation that completely stripped cigarette packaging of any branding, and it's just like sold in a plain brown packet with like the name of the brand on there.
Oh, in Canada,
Um,
it's actually much harsher. We
oh,
instead of having plain brown packet, we stuck pictures of cancer tumors on the packaging to
oh
like
yeah,
visually disgust people.
yeah, we've got that as well, I think. So, but you know, there was a decision made to remove stuff like that, and I just wonder if is that the future that like I mean, obviously, food manufacturers would hate it, but I know in Mexico, I think we might have touched on it, but there's this food labeling thing now where if there's like excessive like calories and stuff like that, you have to actually put a label on the food to say that, and it's kind of similar to the smoking warnings.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, it's also like having packaging, like having like regulations, like let's say making that the nutritional values of your that you put on your labels actually represent a portion that people are likely to consume rather than just a like rather than one that makes your product look healthier than it really is. That's also really important. Having making sure
yeah.
that all the labels are just plainly easy to read, because for a lot of people, when you just end up reading the nutritional value of something, you don't necessarily like the nutritional value or even the ingredients of something. When there's a bunch of ingredients that you can't pronounce, people are going to go, oh well, I can't pronounce this, it must be bad. Sometimes it's just like a normal preservative that is healthier than the other options that are just like a shitload of sodium. And uh, it's just like making sure that people can understand what's in their food, assuring that we have a more informed consumer base.
Yeah,
And
it's funny. It's
there's
funny you say that because, like, you know, you look at like sometimes, like, you know, I'll be in the shop, I'll pick up a cake or something, thinking, oh, I might get a bit of cake. Look at the labeling, and I'm just like, you know, in an eighth of the cake, there's like, you know, 200 calories, and I'm like, I'm not eating a fucking eighth of that. I'm probably gonna eat a quarter. Do you know what I
yeah.
mean? And that's 400 calories straight away, maybe even half.
Hmm.
And you just like this is crazy, you know. And I think that tricks people sometimes, and you end up buying a piece of food and you eat a bunch of it, and then you're like, oh shit, I misread the label. I've just consumed twice the calories I thought I had, you know. And that can make it difficult if you're trying to like eat a sort of balanced diet or trying to watch the calories or whatever it is you're trying to do, you know. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's a little bit of dishonesty that happens sometimes with that sort of labeling that goes on.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is. And when we're talking about the subsidization of food, the main part of that is to make healthy food more accessible. So then, when we look at EBT restrictions, if you listen to certain organizations like the American Public Health Association, there's a lot of articles put on their on the nation's health, which is one of their essentially like publication sites. They'll have a lot of information talking about how EBT restrictions and SNAP restrictions actually end up reducing access to healthy food, and it shows just how much like we're trying to push people towards healthy food, but then those restrictions end up having a counter effect, and it's not really like intuitive, but those are the results that we're seeing, and a lot of it has become part of the stigma. Is that people, because of the stigma, will be less likely to like claim the benefits that they're entitled to. People will also be less likely to even use those benefits after having them claimed. Sorry. Mainly because of how those restrictions are really like state to state and kind of inconsistent. So then people don't know when they can use them and when they can't. And then when in doubt, they'll just use the real money, and that ends up like leaving a bunch of EBT funds just kind of on the table that people have claimed but they haven't used because they don't know how to use them, and a lot of it is because they haven't been informed, and because a lot of it is really inconsistent and isn't really being told to them, and they're not gonna be like prone to asking for help on like, hey, how can I use this, when there's a stigma around receiving them and there's a stigma around using them generally.
Yeah, and this is what I don't understand is when people talk about like EBT, they kind of frame it in such a way as like, oh, they say, well, EBT's good because it promotes healthy eating, or like you get more money for your food, you get more food for your money and stuff like that. And I'm just quite skeptical about this.
EBT generally is good because it's better than nothing.
Yeah,
But like the
sure.
bar, like when the bar is nothing, it's pretty freaking low bar. Like any kind of assistance will be considered good at that point. But is it efficient? No. Are the restrictions really like helping healthier eating? Not really. Are they like warranted in any way for to curb obesity? No, because like 42% of the population, or like 36 to 42% of the population is suffering from obesity. So obviously that's not a poor only problem. If you want to actually make a dent in the obesity rate, you're going to need to impact a lot more of the population than just the poor. And finally, like at the end of the day, is it costly for nothing? Oh, in many ways, yeah. If I was looking specifically at damn, my link is no longer there. I was looking at a way of like the direct cash transfer benefits that we see in America are like really emaciated in comparison to the rest of the developed world. I hate that term, the developed world, but people kind of generally understand what we mean when we use it.
Yeah, okay, I get what you mean. It's all good.
Yeah. So on average, like a single parent of two in America in direct cash transfer is going to receive like $420 a month. That is like minimal. Let's in comparison in Canada. Let's in comparison in Canada, a household, like parents or people with a child of more than 6 years old can get up to like 6,800 a year, and that's just for one child. If you get a second child, then you get more. If the child is younger than 6, then you get more. If the child is on any kind of disability, then you get more. If you're on any kind of disability, then you get more. And it's just like, it seems like the floor in America for direct cash transfers is just ridiculously low. And there's also the fact that there's like work requirements tied into it. There's the fact that there's also like a 5-year lifetime limit on you being eligible for the benefits. So that means like, hey, if you have a kid and you need those direct cash transfers to help your kid, good, you get those direct cash transfers for 5 years. Oh, what's that? You got pregnant and you got another kid 5 years later? Well, fuck you. It's completely ridiculous.
The thing is you know, I think this is where I struggle a bit sometimes with some of the individual responsibility memes. Because I think it's very easy to sit there from the sidelines and be like, well, people should just make better decisions. And like, yeah, of course, there's some truth to that. But we live in a world where people don't make optimum decisions all of the time. And they will have kids when maybe, you know, the circumstances maybe don't quite allow it, right? And it's like,
I mean,
how do you deal with that?
It's not even just that. It's also the fact that like people are being incentivized and are being incentivized to make bad decisions. They're like bad decisions are being actively advertised to them on a daily basis, and it makes it so that it like we have a system that makes it more difficult to make good decisions, whereas we should generally have systems that makes it easier. And like making a system that makes it harder to, let's say, commit a bad decision like eating fast food, that's not going to be a system that makes it easier to make a good decision like eating healthy food. See, like disincentivizing the bad behavior doesn't mean that you're incentivizing the good behavior in return, because there is a middle ground in there, and that middle ground is just like eating mediocre food, and that mediocre food generally won't be all that healthy, and it won't be all that bad either, but you'll still be like suffering from a lack of nutrition in many aspects, especially when it comes to micronutrients or even like macronutrients. Like we talked about previously about proteins. Like if you're in a protein deficiency, then you're gonna be feeling hungry a whole lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, and I think, yeah, like I always think like, you know, obviously if you're really poor, it's better that you're eating something rather than nothing. But again, that's like quite a low bar. Like ideally, we want even poor people in these developed nations to be eating, decent diets which have got the right balance of macronutrients, so they're not kind of going hungry and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's the
And
weird
yeah,
thing of like, it's like when you're poor, but you're also trying to eat healthy. So you look at the nutritional value of your ramen packets to make sure that you've got the one with the right amount of like carb to protein and to like fat to carb to protein ratio. And it's just like, you should have access to maybe more than just ramen.
yeah,
And it's like,
yeah, for
I'm making
sure.
that joke. That was literally me.
Yeah, and I mean, no, I've been there as well. Like, I've been in situations where I've had like, 10 quid to last the week because of strict benefits. It's not like, I was out spending it all. It was literally that's all I would have, 10, 20 pound for a week. And yeah, you kind of end up going out and buying like pasta and stuff like that, and you just buy whatever you could to like get through the week.
Yeah, yeah.
If you had
Eating
a bit of
butter
extra
noodles
cash.
for like 3 dinners a week.
Oh God,
That's my
yeah,
like, okay, maybe not butter noodles. We did have like pasta sauce at the very least, but like that was pretty much my childhood. At some point I was telling my dad like, you need to start cooking something else cuz I can't eat pasta anymore. And it's just like when
yeah,
it's every dinner of every day throughout the entire week, it gets too much. And it's also like things like pasta, they're like they are pretty heavily subsidized because it's like cereal and grain based. Like they're not healthy for you. They're just a huge carb load and they're loaded with sugar essentially. And people will see that as like a healthier option, but like really there's not that much of a difference between like eating spaghetti like out of a can, or you out of a can like Chef Boyardee style, or going to a restaurant. From a nutritional perspective, like they're both going to be pretty bad for you.
yeah,
So,
definitely. I mean, one other interesting angle to get into. I'm not sure how long you were looking to go for
well, you
with this
told me that you
conversation,
had
but
like a roughly 1 hour, so we've got like about 10 minutes left.
yeah, sure. I mean, one interesting angle to get into is this idea of like, so without naming names, there were people that were saying, well, poor people need to
Oh, hey,
spend smarter
you
and like
feel free
meal
to
prep.
hey, you feel free to name the names. I'm not gonna name anybody.
No,
Okay,
that's fine. I just don't know.
I'm in my no drama mode because I'm repping the brand. But
Okay.
if you're repping your own brand, okay, you go wild.
Okay. Well, listen, Doom and Media, I feel, made some kind of five head takes. And, I can't help but feel, I get on well with Doom and Media. And I think that some in some ways he was misrepresented. But I feel like some of his takes came across as just, well, people need to meal prep. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I agree. Meal prepping's great. And it means you can spend less money on food. But like, how do you get the horse to water in the first place? What if they don't know what they're doing? Like, how do we get that information to people? Do you know what I mean? I found it quite frustrating.
Yeah, I
I don't know
mean,
if you had
meal
any
prepping
thoughts
is
on that.
actually something that I just got into. And
Okay.
like me and my fiance essentially, we just got together like Saturdays, the one day of the week when we're both off work and we can both like essentially just like cook for a while. And essentially we decided like, okay, so we're gonna make these two kinds of meals. We've got those like little like bowls that we can put in the freezer. And so we're gonna make two of these meals. We're gonna make like these two kinds of meals. We're gonna make it for like the dinners of the entire week. We're gonna cook them. We're gonna freeze them, and then that way, after work in the evening, we don't know what to eat for dinner. We just grab one of those,
Yeah.
and that it is really convenient. But it's just like getting people to like get into that mentality, and it's also like the whole aspect of like, okay, so you want people to eat healthy, but they're living paycheck to paycheck, and let's say that for a moment their oven breaks and they don't have the money to repair it, or they don't have the money to replace it, and so they need to save up that money to be able to do it. Well, while their oven is broken, they can't really cook, so they're going to be stuck like eating microwavable food, and that's not going to be healthy for them, and that's probably going to be overpriced. And so
Yeah,
that
I
like
think yeah. There can be issues certainly that are like
yeah,
unforeseen circumstances and stuff like that, and
it's the whole thing is
yeah,
like small kitchen appliances, they're not expensive, right? But when you think about the big kitchen appliances, I'm talking like stove and oven, and I'm talking about a fridge. Those are pretty expensive. They're difficult to replace. And they're difficult to repair. I can give you an example. For example, Jesus Christ. My oven broke because I started a grease fire inside of it, like a dumbass.
oh no,
That was a couple months ago. And so we started shopping around, like we decided like, okay, well, we're just not gonna do anything with an oven. The stovetop still works, so we're gonna be cooking using the stovetop until we can replace it. That already limited our options quite a bit. But when we start looking for a new oven and everything, all of the options were like 300 and something dollars, and we had just moved. I had just spent like $1,500 on a move, and I was trying to save that money back, right? I was trying to recuperate what I'd taken from my savings. And so I was just not in a position where I could just spend another 300. So we start looking around for used ovens, right? On like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, that kind of stuff. We find one for $60. It's like, okay, cool. We're going to need to be able to transport it. So we grab a U-Haul. And so we put it on the U-Haul, but then like there's the cost of the U-Haul plus the fact that you have to refuel it at the end. That added another $60. So that was $120 for the oven plus transport. That's still like a pretty sizable expense. We saved quite a bit of money compared to buying new, but that's still a sizable expense that a lot of people living paycheck to paycheck just can't afford to make.
Yeah,
It's not
definitely.
even like it's not even talking about like the cost of food itself. It's about the cost of what you need to prepare the food.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that sometimes some of those takes can, take that kind of concept out of it. But also, yeah, this idea that like people should just be able to conceive of how to do meal prep and stuff like that. And like, that's great if you know, but if you don't, like, obviously, if someone came to me and said, how do I save money on food? I would say to them, well, meal prep, here's some videos you can watch and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
a lot of
yeah, I
times,
think that
like
there's
buying things fresh and like buying things fresh when you can, and then freezing them yourself, or like buying frozen. Like a lot of the time, like frozen vegetables, they're gonna be just as good as the fresh ones. There's no point. Like if buying frozen is more convenient and more cost effective, buy frozen, like all of the time. And there was something else that I wanted to address, which was the whole food desert problem.
Oh yeah, because I've heard multiple things about this. So on the one hand, I've heard people say food deserts are an issue. It's like a 30, 40-minute drive to somewhere to have a car. I've heard other people say it's overstated and it's not that big of a deal. Like, what does the data say, if you know?
Well, in terms of data of like how problematic a food desert can be, like just the fact that you need to use public transportation, let's say to travel your groceries, can be pretty inconvenient and limit the amount of things that you can buy, because at the end of the day you're gonna have to carry those bags in your arms for quite a long distance while you walk home, because like the bus doesn't just deliver you right in front of your door, right?
Yeah.
But generally, yeah, food deserts tend to have a big problem where the most readily accessible foods or food stores are gonna end up like being corner stores, where the food is usually low quality and it's generally very overpriced. So
Yeah.
and then when you take into account like the cost of transportation, if you want to do like a big big load of grocery in North America, you need a car. And a car is a big expense, like just to have access to, and it's a big expense to also maintain, and it's something that a lot of people just can't afford to really keep if they're like really looking to maximize their revenue to expense ratio. But there is kind of an alternative, which is the public option for grocery stores. I don't know if you've ever heard of Baldwin, Florida.
No, what's that?
It's a small little like town of like 1,600 people, and its grocery store was going to close because in a town of 1,600 people, your client base is just not big enough to maintain yourself. But then the city just kind of bought out the store and maintained it for like on a no profit basis.
Wow.
And yeah, and this is really great. People like in the small town kind of love that store, and like it's generally seen as a really good idea, and at least in the circles that I go around. And generally, like the idea is that having a centrally planned apparatus within an otherwise market system is really good at just maintaining a basic floor level of service for all people. So when you have the market that's generally operated on like what is most profitable for the owners, they're going to go where the money already is. They're not going to go where the need is. So, the grocery stores that we find, they go around places where there's already a lot of people with money to purchase things. Whereas the impoverished areas tend to be underserved by practically every kind of service. And so it's really important to have a centrally planned apparatus that distributes its services according to need rather than according to profitability. So then that way the people who are already in areas where it's profitable to have the market operations, well, they have the services they need. And the people who need those services the most but are being underserved, now they're being granted a new service, and that can also help revitalize the kind of locale, because the operations of that centrally planned apparatus will end up creating jobs. And then those jobs are most likely going to be people from the local community, and that can help generate more income revenue. And then that income revenue means income tax, and then that added income tax that is being taken from that specific local community ends up contributing to that local community. The fact that people also keep on spending their money in their community rather than having to move to a different community to go spend their money over there makes it so that there is less of a money drain effect, right? Because when you look at certain, like when you look at a lot of communities where, let's say, I lived in an impoverished area, so if I need to find a job, I need to drive to the neighboring town. If I want to buy something, I need to move to the neighboring town. And that makes it so that all of the businesses from that neighboring town are taking the money from someone that lives in my town, and they're taking it. And then that tax revenue is going to that neighboring town. Meanwhile, my town isn't getting anything from my consumption. And this is a big effect that we see. Like a lot of impoverished areas, the people have to go to a neighboring area to start spending their money. And then it's that neighboring area that benefits from the taxes that they spend.
That's I've never heard of this place before. So we've got something kind of comparable, I guess, in the UK, where not with food, but if like there's a problem with a private train company running a part of the train network, the government will take over it and run it itself in some cases. And yeah, I like this idea of like having like a baseline option if there's no other choice. So yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
but I guess again, it's about
possibility. There's also like the big trait of consumer co-ops that tend to be very big in grocery markets. Those tend to operate for lesser profits, and they tend to be more like communally based. So they'll end up like sticking around more, even if profits aren't great, compared to privately owned firms that will like see a better opportunity somewhere else, and so they'll just move. But those are like two different options that can help like provide a floor level of service. And
sounds kind of like communism, though.
Damn it! Wait, I've got my bisexual lighting, so I've got like the red color here. Wait, there you go.
Based.
I'm going full commie. Look at me, just falling in the red. I'm falling in the red, just like your finances.
Based. Yeah, the bread lines are already beginning, comrade.
Yeah. Hi.
But yeah, I think that's a really good point. This idea of.
Sorry, this is my fiance. Hello.
Oh, hello. How's it going?
Yeah, he just asked how's it going. Sorry, she can't hear you. We're just finishing up. Do you mind waiting outside? I haven't started dinner yet.
Fuck.
I know. I was busy.
Fuck.
I was busy.
I'll start burning one.
Thank you. Yeah, we're eating pasta today. We decided to treat ourselves with the unhealthy food.
You're splashing out.
What? Sorry?
You're splashing out on pasta.
Yes, I know. Yeah, and tomorrow we're going to be eating out. And then the day after that, we're also going to be eating out.
Oh my God. Champagne socialism, if ever I
Okay,
saw
no,
it.
sweetheart. Okay, we're going to a protest downtown. Do you really think I'm gonna bother eating here, then going there? No, I'm gonna go there early. I'm gonna eat while I'm over there, and after that, we're gonna be hanging out with Sid. What the fuck do you think we're gonna do? We're gonna grab some food. We're gonna buy some beers. We're gonna chill at his place.
And then the day
Based.
after, we're eating cake.
Well, yeah, but your parents bought that cake. Okay, it's not our money. I don't care. Yeah, sorry, it's her birthday tomorrow. So.
Oh, no worries. Well, many happy returns. I hope you have a pleasant birthday tomorrow.
Yes, he wishes you a happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
She says thank you.
Based. Okay, cool. Well, listen, thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
I
it was
do
a
need
really
to,
pleasant chat. I hope we can do this again someday.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds good. And listen, if you want to debate, there's often some crazy shit happening on my channel. So by all means, come by.
Absolutely.
And maybe we can get into the memes
I'll start
there.
I'll start by talking shit in your chat while I'm at work, and then I'll drop in your Discord while I'm still at work, and I'll be arguing on debate while I'm filing taxes or some shit.
Amazing. I love it. Good shit.
Okay. Yeah. Well.
Okay.
See you, man. Have a nice evening, and I hope we'll get to talk again soon.
I'm sure we will. Pleasure. Catch you later.
All right. See you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. It's okay, poo poo caca. Thanks. You know what? If you blow up the chat, that's more engagement, and engagement drives more views. So you blow up as much as you want. I was really just engaged in the conversation either way. So yeah, obviously I'm gonna need to go and prepare dinner. This was a bit of an impromptu stream, wasn't too planned. I just want to thank everybody for joining. Don't forget to like, subscribe, ring the bell, give me your firstborn child, all of it, everything. And also go check out our Substack, Cartesian Otter, who just wrote an article on the Competes Act over there. It's a nice little piece, and I think that you'll enjoy it a lot if you like to talk about the disruptions of supply chains and such, and competing with China so that the commies don't win. So yeah, have a good night, everyone, and I hope you have a good one. And I hope that you come back to the next stream, because hopefully we'll have a lot more of these. All right, cheers.